Israel says its war with Iran is far from over. Thank you for joining us this evening on I-24 News. I'm Nicole Zedek, live in Tel Aviv. Tonight, we are tracking the latest on day 16 of the United States and Israel's war against Iran. The IDF now says it has at least 3 more weeks of planned strikes targeting Iran's military infrastructure, missile production, and command networks. Israeli officials say today alone, the Israeli Air Force hit more than 200 targets across Iran. But military officials say thousands of targets remain on the strike list. And the goal of the campaign is not tied to a timeline, but to significantly degrading Iran's military capabilities and its ability to threaten Israel. Here's the latest update from IDF spokesman, Brigadier General Effie Defrin.
The ballistic missile array and launchers are the main threat to the Israeli home front. So far, we have attacked more than 700 targets of the missile array in real time. We have managed to reduce the firing. We have managed to take more than 70% of the ballistic missile launchers out of use. All the UAVs launched into Israeli territory so far have been intercepted by the Air Force. We continue to hunt the missiles and launchers all the time. At the same time, we have hit the Iranian defense array, which includes surface-to-air missile defense systems, radars, and other regime systems. This attack allows the Air Force freedom of action to attack with unprecedented force throughout Iran. We attacked 80% of these defense systems. After we hit these arrays, we moved to the next stage of the operation, deepening the damage to all of the regime's systems. First, we hit the regime's military industries. These are the sites used to create ballistic missiles, unmanned aerial vehicles, weapons that we found in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. Hitting the entire production chain enables us to delay and disrupt the regime's ability to rearm itself in the future. This is damage that will take them a long time to repair. So far, we have attacked more than 100 such production targets. Each target has dozens of different components, all of which we are destroying. In addition, we hit the regime's control mechanisms, its headquarters and staff. We eliminated many thousands of commanders and soldiers of the regime while they were operating in headquarters and bunkers. We also hit the regime's repression mechanisms, the Basij, internal security, and the intelligence headquarters. So far, we have attacked more than 500 command and control targets. These are strikes that allow us to undermine the regime's ability to conduct its attacks. The third component we hit is the Iranian nuclear project. After severely damaging it in the Rising Lion operation, we are attacking infrastructure that is part of the regime's efforts to fortify and conceal its nuclear program.
Many developments for us to discuss over the next 2 hours on this special broadcast. And joining me in studio to discuss it all, we have our I-24 News senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Osran, as well as security analyst Yaakov Lapin, host of the Lapin Assessment. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us on I-24 News as always. Yaakov, we just heard this update from the IDF spokesman about where we stand day 16 and the current targets that the Israeli Air Force continues to attack inside Iran. But where does this look for then entering the third week? We have greatly degraded the missile launch capabilities. So what are the next top priorities for Israel to go after?
I think the spokesperson, Effie Defrin, mentioned missile production seems to be a higher priority now that the missile launchers, so many of them have been knocked out. And obviously those that survive will be chased and hunted. But there's a real emphasis now to go after the Iranian military-industrial complex, their ability to produce missiles, the fuel, the knowledge, the expertise, the infrastructure. They've produced 0 missiles since this war began. And I think that tells us about what kind of damage their industry is facing. And the goal here is that when the dust settles and this war does end, the Iranians are not going to be able to immediately start producing missiles. It will take them a long time, and those attempts, assuming the regime survives, will be visible. And I think that what the clue here really is that Israel has no intention of letting them build another 1,000, 2,000 missiles and then acting. I think if we start to see intelligence of Iranian missile production resuming, there will be very little time until jets are once again heading east. I think that's going to be the new normal for the nuclear and the missile programs. The Iranian regime, as far as Israel is concerned, is to be left after this war paralyzed, broken, unable to project power far beyond its borders, support the terror proxies, the Ring of Fire, all of those pillars of the destruction of Israel plan, which the Iranian regime has been following, are not going to be allowed to be reconstituted if the regime survives.
All right, so these are Israel's goals. Ariel, what about Iran's goals as it stands 16 days into this war? How are they playing the current battlefield right now?
Iran has one goal: survival. That is what they're aiming at doing, and they're using all means at their disposal, all pressure levers that they have in order to leverage that position. We have seen this in their decision to attack. I think the current count is 13 countries, mainly their 6 neighbors in the Gulf. We can exclude Oman because they have been hardly hit in comparison to other countries such as the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. In fact, just a short while ago, the Iranian armed forces issued an IDF-inspired evacuation notice to 3 areas in Qatar, as they did also for areas and ports in the UAE, trying to maximize the psychological warfare impact. But really, the main focus of Iran's pressure tactics are in the Strait of Hormuz, basically telling countries, if you want to ensure safe passage for your vessels carrying oil in the strategic waterway, you have to talk to us and get our approval. We heard similar statements on that note coming from the foreign minister of India, confirming that he is engaged in direct talks with Iran that allowed the safe passage of 2 vessels on Saturday, saying it's better to, engage with the Iranians rather than not to, and it has worked for me, so I'm going to continue to do that. Those are his words in an interview to the Financial Times. Ultimately, for Iran, this might, paradoxically end up serving them strategically, because if indeed they manage to, pressure the West into submission over the Strait of Hormuz, this could improve their strategic standing moving forward. This is what they're banking on, and this is what the U.S. is trying to kind of take the sting out of Iran's pressure over the Strait of Hormuz, trying to encourage other countries to take action because they too are affected. So far, we have not heard an announcement by any country that they've decided to not necessarily engage with Iranian forces in the Strait of Hormuz, but to accompany ships that are traveling through there. And so at the moment, it appears that the Iranian pressure is working. Whether this will continue to be beneficial for them and how this will all evolve, that still remains to be seen. But ultimately, the Iranians are pulling all the stops here and focusing on the global economy, specifically through the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, you mentioned the U.S. goal in all of this, and we are certainly seeing the rhetoric from Washington also escalating as the war enters its 3rd week. U.S. President Donald Trump is warning that American forces could carry out additional strikes on Kharg Island. That's Iran's main oil export terminal in the Gulf. Kharg Island is one of the most critical pieces of Iran's energy infrastructure, and further attacks there could have some major implications for global oil markets. At the same time, Iran also expanding its own response across the region, launching drone and missile attacks targeting Gulf states and energy infrastructure, while continuing to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. That is that narrow waterway where 1/5 of the world's oil supply normally passes. And those threats, they're pushing energy prices sky high. Well, for the latest out of Washington, let's bring in our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. Mike, when we talk about this pressure along the Strait of Hormuz, we are learning that U.S. President Donald Trump recently held a phone call with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss the importance of opening the Strait of Hormuz. Any details on this phone call you could share?
Well, it's a readout has come from the British side, nothing yet from the White House. There's some acrimony there, to say the least, between Trump and Starmer. President Trump not exactly pleased and made it very publicly known about the delay from Prime Minister Starmer in offering help and offering assistance with American operations, with offering military assets and support during this war. Starmer is now coming around just a bit, and the readout from the UK saying they're talking about the situation in the Middle East and what's to come here. But unless you get both sides of the story, it's really difficult to assess exactly where that relationship stands. Trump said publicly a few days back, listen, it's too late now, essentially. You're late to the game. We don't need your help now. He probably went a bit overboard with that, but it's just kind of indicative of the way the relationship stands right now. But at that same hand, Trump is asking for a coalition of countries to try to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody essentially gang up on Iran, so to speak, and with the sheer force of numbers and the sheer force of cooperation to be able to overwhelm Iran and force them out of the strait and recapture control of that crucial waterway there. So maybe the UK can play a role. Maybe it is too late. But in either case, Trump is laying out the case for the world. Everybody needs to have skin in the game right now.
Mike, as we do enter this third week of the war, are the energy markets actually shaping the course? I mean, could this economic fallout be forcing Washington to slow down or even rethink some of its military plans as this war does continue?
Well, you know, so much of the focus is on energy prices in the U.S. and how it's affecting Trump domestically and how it's affecting the administration domestically in the polling, in the upcoming elections, with Republican pressure mounting as the war goes on. There's a factor here it's not overlooked, but it's just not talked about as much in American media, is the pressure that's going to come or already has come from Gulf allies. You know, they were quite, I don't know, outwardly supportive, but at least not outwardly critical of the Trump administration in the early days of this war. We're starting to see some cracks in there. And as the Gulf countries take more hits from the Iranians, especially in their own critical infrastructure and their own energy exports begin to slow down to minimal levels, that could also play a major factor in how far the president is willing to take this thing in the end.
Mike Wagenheim with the latest out of Washington. We will be coming back to you for more updates later in this broadcast. Thank you very much. I want to bring in another voice into this conversation as well. We're joined now by Joel Rubin, the former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, as well as an author of the Briefing book on Substack. He's joining us from Washington. Joel, thanks for being with us on I-24 News today.
Appreciate it, Nicole. Thank you.
Well, we're 16 days in, so I want to begin by asking from Washington's perspective, what phase of the war are we in right now? Is there a coherent war strategy going forward?
Yeah, Nicole, I think that right now Washington overall is still grappling to answer that question because we don't really have clarity from the White House about their end state and their time frame. And so because of that, we see Congress grappling, looking at votes that are more about messaging than about policy. We see the media covering it on a day-to-day basis and the what's up, what's down, the gas prices and whatnot. But I really think this is truly the president's war, and it's one where he has taken full control of the decision-making about it. And from my vantage point, I think he still believes he's in the early stages of this war, in that clearing out the resistance from Iran was the priority, hitting the hard targets that are most concerned. But now the question is how far does he want to go and how long will he wait to see if some opposition forms or some alternative voice inside Iran that he can then use to say he has a victory on his hands.
Well, you say this is the U.S. president's war. So what is that coordination with Israel, who's fighting this war alongside them? Because today we heard from Israel, they still have at least weeks, maybe 3 weeks of strikes planned inside Iran. How closely is the United States coordinating with Israel on these ongoing battle plans? And is that timeline possibly longer than the U.S. president might want to see?
Well, Nicole, it's been an extraordinary joint operation that really can't be stated strongly enough. I really don't believe anybody in Washington who's been watching this space for years, expected the type coordination on a military operational level that we've seen between the United States and Israel, and to see it so seamlessly executed. But that doesn't mean that all the goals are the same. It doesn't mean that President Trump can't decide in a week or two that he's seen enough, and then he communicates that to the prime minister. So there's always going to be this question that is out there about different long-term goals. But ultimately, when I say this is the United States war and President Trump's war, it's because he made the decision to take an action that, quite frankly, Prime Minister Netanyahu had been seeking for many years, for many presidents, and this one decided to go for it.
When we talk about the war continuing, possibly for several more weeks, what does victory then look like for the United States? What would be a decisive win for U.S. President Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of points that we can really look to. First and foremost is the complete degradation of Iran's military and its offensive capabilities, as well as its ability to project power around the region. Because of its use of ballistic missiles in particular, that has become a primary concern. So that will need to be succumbed and dealt with effectively. And then again, the nuclear material, that's going to also be a major measuring stick by which people will assess the worthiness of this action. Will we capture the enriched nuclear material or not? Where will it be? If we can't answer that question after the end, I think there will be a lot of concern about the effectiveness in the long run. And then, of course, the open question about the ground, on the ground, the Iranian people. Will they take to the streets once the bombs stop flying? And if they do, will we continue to support them and launch strikes against those who may try to push back on them to see if there can be a new kind of governance inside of Tehran?
Joel Rubin, great to have you with us on I-24 News today and hear your insights. Thank you very much. Well, back here in Israel, over the past 24 hours, Iran has launched several barrages of missiles toward Israel, triggering air raid sirens across central and southern parts of the country, sending millions of Israelis rushing to shelters. Police and emergency services say at least 8 people were injured in the latest attacks, some of those injuries from cluster bomb munitions. I want to go live to our I-24 News correspondent, Balik Sladin. He's joining us from Ramat Gan, which is one of the sites of the impacts. Balik, what exactly happened from where you are? Can you describe the scene from earlier in the day?
Yes, so as you've mentioned, actually, in the past 24 hours, we're witnessing an increase in Iran's firing of missiles toward the state of Israel and specifically toward the center of Israel. And after the overnight barrages that didn't result in any serious damage or people that were injured as a result of it, but throughout the day and specifically at around 2 p.m., a barrage of missiles that was fired toward this area caused lots of damage actually in Ramat Gan, where we are. 8 different sites were damaged. 1 person at least was injured in this attack, and his condition is relatively, of course, mild, but we're still talking about a serious barrage that caused impact and damaged lots of houses and residential buildings. Also in Bnei Brak, where we were before, a person that was in his car, he did not go to a shelter, apparently as a result of the glass that broke because of the shrapnel after the interception, of course, that caused injury, and he is in a moderate condition. A person that was inside the building that was hit again by a shrapnel, he is in a mild condition. And the building itself has been damaged, 8 different apartments, of course. So this is ultimately, of course, thankfully, no one was hurt or in a serious condition, but we're talking about a large number of different sites because of this cluster bomb munition. Many people needed to evacuate their homes, of course, and they are being transferred to different hotels throughout the state of Israel, and that causes a lot of trouble, of course. But again, at least in this very intense day, relatively, of course, we are still not talking about any fatalities or casualties as a result of Iran's barrage of missiles.
Believe, what about the latest instructions from the Homefront Command? I know some guidelines are set to change in certain areas of the country, not in the central, but starting tomorrow, Monday morning. Are those guidelines still expected? And what does that mean for residents throughout the country?
Yes, well, in the south of Israel, in specific municipalities, actually in the south of Israel, not all of them, we are getting from the Homefront Command some more openness for the people to be relieved, specifically in terms of opening the educational system. But in spite of that, we're hearing from municipalities like Dimona, for example, or others actually as well. Although they have actually the green light from the Defense Ministry to open the schools and the kindergarten kindergarten and the places that they can open, they still choose not to open them because they are afraid of the situation, and they're saying that it's not safe enough, and the parents themselves also don't want to send their children to school in this situation. So this is first. The guidelines in the different parts of Israel, the other parts are not changing, but what is changing, and we've spoke about this before, is actually the early warning system. It has been very problematic that once the missiles is fired from Iran, we are getting this early warning to a vast, or actually a wide range of municipalities and different towns in the center, for example, in the north as well. And that causes people to wake up in large numbers, although that missile is not headed actually toward them. But the caution was because of possible interception, and then shrapnels of that interception can actually cause a lot of damage and harm. But in the Home Front commanders are now saying that in case of an interception, that shrapnel can, of course, cause damage, but the ceiling or the roof over one's head is enough to prevent it or prevent the serious damage. That's why they're not going right now to give an early warning for a wide area, rather only a specific area where that missile is headed specifically, so people can actually have a good night's sleep and wake up in the morning and continue with their daily lives. This is the reality here, and after 2 weeks, people need to get used to it. And of course, not sleeping throughout the night while you need to wake up 3-4 times. This is very, very problematic. That's why the Home Front Command is now changing this issue about the early warning system.
Hopefully some more peaceful and quiet nights, maybe a good night's sleep ahead for all of us. Malik Sladin with those updates out of central Israel. Thank you very much. Coming back here in studio, Yaakov, when we talk about Iran continuing to fire, albeit smaller and less frequent barrages towards Israel, if neither side is signaling easing up when it comes to this stage of the fighting, are we now looking at more of a prolonged regional conflict that could be going not only for weeks, but months of a projectile fired here, a projectile fired there?
I'm pretty skeptical that it's going to go on for that long. There are multiple reasons to believe that it will not go on for that long. First of all, President Trump, I think he's facing considerations that are not military or operational in nature, even though he's already signaled that he's very satisfied with the pace of operations. And he said just last week that he's going to call it and that the war is going to end soon. These are things that the president has said. He's the commander-in-chief. And in many ways, I view him as the sort of the CEO of this war. He is the one who's going to set the timeline. And when he calls it quits, I don't see a situation where he's going to end and Israel's going to keep fighting. I don't see any situation like that. So he's already signaled that he wants to start to see the end game here, the horizon. So I don't think we can ignore that. I think these are the most significant.
Could that put Israel in a tough spot, though, if they haven't crossed off all of their lists of targets, but the U.S. is ready to be done?
I don't think it's going to be too tough a spot, because what we're seeing now is really historic military and operational achievements by the Israeli Air Force. And I think that should really be the focus, much more right now than will the regime fall and how long is it going to last. The regime is being stripped of its existential ability to threaten this country's existence. The missile program, the nuclear program, the proxy, the headquarters, we can go on and on. So that's the most important immediate thing that's happening. And so what we see is a window of opportunity that is being exploited. Now, the Iranians, yes, we could argue that they'll continue to fire even once the United States and Israel decide, whenever that is, and we don't know. Once the United States and Israel decide to cease fire, some say, well, what's to stop the Iranians from continuing to fire? I think a lot is stopping them. Let's remember that every day that passes, they are losing huge amounts of capabilities and personnel. We are not. They are. The Americans are not. They are. And so I think, as a state, no matter how hardline the IRGC is, it would much prefer to take a break and to regroup and try to stabilize their regime than to continue to fight. So I'm pretty skeptical of the idea that the Iranians want to keep firing forever, because they know that that's going to bring more devastating firepower their way. So when we're talking about the Iranian arena, I think the timeline is not indefinite, despite what we're hearing. It's not going to be tomorrow, But I think that it's not going to go on for months. I'm very, very skeptical it's going to go for months, and even several weeks I'm pretty skeptical about.
And Ariel, when it comes to what Yaakov is saying here, you brought it up that the main goal right now is regime survival. So a pause in this war, is that something that Iran is actually hoping for sooner rather than later?
If it means that the regime is surviving, then yes. I mean, they will take any offer, even with Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi saying that, or rejecting Trump's claim that they're seeking an agreement, saying we never asked for negotiations, we never sought a ceasefire. That is what they're hoping for. They want to hit the pause button. If they could, they'd hit the stop button. But ultimately, what they're seeking is to ensure the longevity of the regime. Down the line, they will find ways to rebuild their capabilities, because as long as this regime is in power, they're going to continue to seek, breakaway for nuclear capabilities, as well as rebuilding their ballistic missile program. And so hitting the pause button will allow them to breathe, to resume their repression domestically and rebuild their offensive capabilities.
All right, stay with us here in studio. We're going out for a very quick break here on I-24 News, but when we come back, we're going to turn our attention to Hezbollah, Iran's proxy that has joined the fight. A lot more for us to discuss following reports that negotiations could be on the horizon. We're going to break all of that down right here on I-24 News. Don't go anywhere.
My name is Eli Sharabi, and I lost my wife Lian and my two daughters, Noya and Yahel, on October 7th.
491 days in captivity. When Eli Sharabi learned his wife Lian and their daughters were murdered, he made a vow to turn his pain into hope. Now, Shalva is opening the Sharabi Center in Ashkelon, providing vital care for PTSD and disabilities in their memory. Eli survived to keep this promise. We need you to help us build it. Don't stand idly by. Donate today at www.shalva.org/Sharabi.
And I believe my wife and daughters would be proud to see their names connected to a place that brings healing to others.
Right now, sirens are sounding from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. All across Israel, hundreds of missiles and drones from Iran are striking civilians in desperate need of food, life-saving mobile bomb shelters, and emergency supplies. Many families are trapped underground, unable to leave without risking their lives. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has emergency teams working where the danger is greatest, but critical supplies are running out. Please respond with an emergency gift of $45 now. Your $45 will help provide a one-week emergency food box and resupply trauma bags for first responders in the line of fire tonight. In this critical hour, Christians and Jews can stand shoulder to shoulder against the evil regime in Iran. But there is no time to delay. Give $45 now. Call the number on your screen, scan the QR code, and stand with Israel now.
In moments of challenge, strength comes from standing together. Israel Bonds launched an international campaign to rally global support for Israel following Operations Epic Fury and Roaring Lion, sending a clear and powerful message that now is the time to stand strong with Israel. Make your statement. Invest now at israelbonds.com. Scan the QR code to invest in Israel today.
You live in Israel or you are preparing for your Aliyah? Congratulations. You have a smartphone? Perfect. Download the Olim app for free and discover everything we have to offer. Booking medical and administrative appointments, bills paying, debt verification, instant translation, contractor recommendation, request tracking, and much more. And if you can't manage it on your own, our team speaks your language and assists you with all your procedures in Israel, starting from 199 shekels per month, unlimited and for the whole family. Don't hesitate any longer. Download the app or contact us.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
sirens are continuing across the state of Israel.
We're seeing dozens of people that have just picked up.
We're going to take a walk through the site because this is incredibly interesting right now.
Iran has attacked more Arab countries than Israel ever did.
Oh my God.
Really, they're lashing out at the entire region.
It's actually backfired on the Iranians.
Hezbollah made a very big mistake by attacking us.
We have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it.
Thanks for staying with us here on I-24 News. Now onto the northern front. There have been reports of possible diplomacy with Lebanon, suggesting negotiations might be coming within days to try and end the latest round of fighting with Hezbollah. But Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar is shutting those reports down. Let's listen.
If the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army want to change something, they should do something in order to stop the attacks being done by Hezbollah from Lebanese territory. Until now, they hadn't done anything significant in order to stop it. By the way, until now, ministers who are affiliated with Hezbollah are members of the Lebanese government. So we all for peace and normalization in the future, including with Lebanon. I think the problem is Lebanon is Hezbollah. We don't have real disputes with the state of Lebanon. We have some minor border disputes that can be solved quite easily. But the problem is Hezbollah.
All the while, fighting along the northern border continues with daily rocket and drone launches from Hezbollah and the idea of striking targets deeper inside Lebanon. So while some regional players are floating this idea of diplomacy, right now the message from Jerusalem is clear. First, stop the attacks, then we can talk. Well, I want to bring this talk now in studio. Still with me, Ariel Osran and Yaakov Lapin. Ariel, I have to say, even since the foreign minister gave these statements, more and more reports have come out that these talks are going to happen between Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Israel. What should we make of the surrounding news cycle? Any truth that can be said here?
Look, what we can say is the talks aren't going to happen until they happen. That's what we know for certain. But there have been reports indicating that on the Israeli side, these talks are expected to happen in the coming days. This is according to two Israeli officials cited by Reuters. And on the other side, on the Lebanese side, there's Saturday reports that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has completed assembling the Lebanese negotiating team that will engage with Israel, saying that Aoun's move is not connected to the initiative brought forth by the French, which, quote, has taken more than it can handle. That's a nice, interesting jab to the French here. And this reporting ultimately, though, the understanding is that in the current situation with Hezbollah attacking Israel numerous times, just yesterday, they claimed responsibility for 47 attacks against Israel. That is the highest single-day number since they resumed attacks on Israel last week. It'll be very hard for Israel to engage in open talks with Lebanon under these current situations, and it will be even more challenging to have the U.S. pressure Israel to stop the strikes or to engage in these talks. What is clear is that there is willingness on both sides, both in Beirut and in Jerusalem, to engage in these talks. There is no enmity between the state of Israel and the state of Lebanon. The only threat that is coming to the state of Israel is from Lebanese territory, but this is an Iranian-backed militia. And so as long as they continue to pose a threat for Israel and actively attack its civilian population, negotiations are challenging, to say the least, but the sides are trying to work behind the scenes to try and find mechanisms to enable this process to move forward down the line.
How closely is this Iranian proxy Hezbollah actually working with Iran when it comes to this current war? What is the coordination that we're seeing between Hezbollah and Tehran?
Hezbollah received the order from Iran to get involved in this war. That's why they fired rockets on Haifa back on March 2nd. That was their entry. And since then, actually what we've seen is that the terrorist commanders that are responsible for that very coordination that you're asking about, they've actually been eliminated. You had senior Hezbollah members who were in direct touch with the IRGC Quds Force eliminated from a variety of units, rocket, anti-tank, Radwan. Also, there was a division called the Imam Hussein Division, which was made up of both IRGC and Hezbollah members. And it was basically in charge of coordinating exactly these kinds of activities. The entire command structure of that division has been eliminated in recent days. So they're not operationally able to coordinate right now in any meaningful way. What's happening is that when Hezbollah sees that there are early warnings of Iranian missiles, they try to time their rockets to try and confuse and flood the air defense system. It's not working very well for them, but that's what they've been trying to do. And I think operationally they're cut off. They're not able to coordinate very much at all at the moment.
When it comes to how the United States is viewing this, when it comes to the broader war goals here, I mean, Ariel, is the U.S. monitoring this front with Lebanon? Because they had wanted to see a deal. They had wanted to see Lebanon and Israel and Hezbollah disarm. But in the current stage of this war, has that been pushed to the sidelines?
Well, there was the ceasefire in place since November 27th of 2024. In the 15 months that have passed since, Israel has continued to strike Hezbollah, and Hezbollah has refrained from attacking Israel until last Monday. Throughout that entire period, you had a body that's called the Oversight Mechanism that was responsible for, overseeing the implementation of the ceasefire, to provide a place for both Israel and Lebanon to voice their grievances against the other side. That mechanism was headed by an American general. That mechanism is still in place. The thing is, after a 15-month period of only one side adhering to the ceasefire, or, you can say that Israel did adhere, but it continued its strikes. Now no one is adhering to the ceasefire. And so the active role of the mechanism is not, that has been sidelined, but it's still there. It's still in place. It still serves as an interlocutor between Israel and Lebanon. And so this mechanism is not, it hasn't met since Hezbollah has resumed its strikes, but it is a body that has been meeting every couple months. And so this would lay the groundwork for holding negotiations, direct talks between Israel and Lebanon, because it was just a couple months ago when the Lebanese side introduced to its meetings in the mechanism a civilian element, a representative on behalf of the Lebanese government. And for the first time, it wasn't just on the military level. Israel reciprocated with sending a representative from the National Security Council. And so that was indeed the first signal that Israel and Lebanon are inching closer towards direct talks on the political level, not just on the military level. And so that laid the framework for what we are discussing right now, the potential of full, direct talks between Israel and Lebanon. So is this mechanism still operational? It still exists, but is it engaged right now in trying to lower the level of escalation in Lebanon? Not quite.
All right, certainly a front that we will continue to monitor in the coming days. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Stay with us here in studio. A lot more for us to discuss, as the Iran war has created not just ripple effects throughout the world, but actually a tidal wave of economic fallout affecting everyday citizens just trying to fill up their tanks with gas. Here's a closer look at one example of residents feeling the pain at the pump in Thailand.
Long lines, gas shortages, and astronomical prices have caused citizens all over Thailand to run on fumes.
It is worrying because diesel has run out at several stations. I drive a delivery truck every day, so it is concerning for me.
Right now, I am worried there might not be fuel available. Many stations seem to be running out. Diesel is the main concern, though other fuels are still available.
The Thai government froze diesel prices since the beginning of the war against Iran, but they're set to expire tomorrow, with gas stations putting a cap on refueling.
Sales are much higher than usual. The manager of the gas station has limited trucks to $150 per fill and jerry cans to 13 gallons.
Iran's attacks on shipping vessels in the Strait of Hormuz have led to devastating consequences. You can see the black smoke on this Thai cargo ship that was hit. 20 crew members were rescued by lifeboats, but 3 crew members are still missing, and the family of Aoum is waiting for news on his whereabouts.
My daughter called and told me that the ship Aoum was on had been attacked, but Aoum was in the engine room and they couldn't find him. Right now, I pray to the sacred spirits to protect him and keep him safe. I hope he can come back home.
All navigating through the Strait.
The IEA says Iran's attacks on shipping vessels in the Strait of Hormuz have led to more than just a logjam. The ongoing war has triggered the largest oil supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. And the IEA decision last week to release 400 million barrels from the global supply chain could be the only hope to get things back on track.
Now a glimpse at how this war is playing out online. Is Benjamin Netanyahu dead? Does Tel Aviv look like Gaza? These are some of the false narratives being spread online during this Israel-Iran war. Our correspondent Joe Brown takes a deeper look into the spread of fake news, who started it, and how to spot it.
Benjamin Netanyahu is dead, and Tel Aviv has been reduced to rubble. These are 2 conspiracy theories that have been heavily speculated on social media lately. Now, obviously, neither of those are correct, but this is part of a pattern of clearly false information about the war spreading online. So, let's take a look into these theories, who is saying them, and what it shows about the state of social media in its current iteration. First of all, let's discuss the theory about Benjamin Netanyahu's death. This has been pushed by the IRGC-linked Tasman news agency, claiming the Israeli Prime Minister was killed in a missile last week, and that has been piggybacked by many a social media user. There is zero basis for this. A picture claiming to show him being taken out of the rubble was doctored by AI. Netanyahu was last seen in public in Beit Shemesh at the scene of a deadly impact on March the 2nd and in Beersheba on March the 6th. Since then, it is assumed that he has stayed in close proximity to a bunker for fairly obvious reasons. In this safe space, he gave a press conference last Thursday that led to dozens of bizarre conspiracy theories. First of all, he does not have 6 fingers on his hand. That is a crease in his palm. Another picture, supposed to show that he has 6 fingers on his left hand, clearly shows that he has 5. Both of these implied that this was AI generated. The Prime Minister has since acknowledged the stupid conspiracy theories, saying he is alive, drinking coffee, and showing that he has the normal number of fingers. And on the subject of AI, dozens of fake videos of Tel Aviv supposedly getting bombed have circulated. And this has been coupled with claims that the media is not showing you the truth because of IDF press censorship. Listen, if you speak to anyone on the ground or see videos from the streets, you can see that this is quite clearly not the case. In total, 1 building in Tel Aviv was destroyed and dozens have been damaged. And if you want to see how much the media has hidden this is me reporting for I24 News social media, and this is me reporting for I24 News TV the day after the missile landed on March the 1st. So it's not hiding it very well, but that hasn't stopped some people from saying otherwise.
A Tel Aviv that now looks like Gaza. How do I know that? Because I've got friends in Tel Aviv. Shankin Street, Tel Aviv. Near Dizengoff Square, Tel Aviv. And they've been walking around, and it's they who tell me from their own mouth that Tel Aviv now looks like Gaza. How could it not?
That fedora-wearing crank is British politician George Galloway, a man who has dedicated his life to spreading defamatory lies about the West, doing so on his appearances on Russian and Iranian state TV. First of all, George, Shankin Street is about a 50-minute walk away from Dizengoff Square. You have to go down King George Street, turn a left on Dizengoff Street, but either way, they're not close. And secondly, George Galloway famously refused to debate a young Elon Levy because he is Israeli, so I highly doubt that he has friends who live in central Tel Aviv. But the thing is, that doesn't matter, because social media is a mass content providing machine. It doesn't matter if you are right, you just have to be loud enough to be seen. In fact, being wrong makes you louder. Here's how the X algorithm works according to its open source coding. Each action has a weighted point score. Liking a post is worth 0.5 points. A reply is worth 13.5 points, 27 times as much as a like. And an author of the post responding to a reply is worth 75 points, 150 times more than a like. The more points you get, the more traction it gets. And with X monetizing posts, you can profit off this very easily. So if you respond to a post, even one to say that it's clearly fake, it will get that post boosted. And with the amount of content someone sees while scrolling through social media, most people don't have the time to verify everything that they see, so their brain will suspend disbelief and take it as fact. And that is how fake news spreads, cyclically and destructively. Some people take advantage of the algorithm to make a quick buck from social media platforms. Others are from state level, in order to muddy the waters with what's true and what's not, to manipulate public discourse. This is not a secret, and it's been happening for at least a decade now. But with the Israel-Iran war, I can't help but think that it's gotten more obvious and more stupid. So how can you tell what's real and what's not? With videos, it's getting much harder, but there are still some tells. As a rule of thumb, if you think something looks off, it probably is. If you look closer, you can see things that defy the laws of physics, such as cars changing shape. In terms of factual disinformation, this is where you have to look at and evaluate your sources. With mainstream or legacy media, your reputation relies on accuracy. This is not the case for social media. For CNN, Fox, or I24 News, we have to pass through hurdles of verification to make sure that things we say are indeed factual. For social media, the quickest one is the winner, regardless of its legitimacy. So if you want news that you are sure is correct, pay more attention to proper sources, not just useful idiots who are still wearing fedoras.
As the war continues, there are growing concerns about rising anti-Semitism and threats to Jewish communities around the world. New details have emerged about the recent attack outside a synagogue in Michigan, where authorities say the suspect opened fire near a Jewish school. Well, now the Israeli military says that attacker's brother was a Hezbollah commander who was recently killed in Lebanon. The incident comes amid a broader spike in threats against Jewish institutions globally. Security officials across Europe and North America, they've warned Jewish communities to be on guard and up security as tensions surrounding the war spill far beyond the Middle East. To discuss more, we're joined now by Jacob Dalal, Advisory Board at Fighting Online Anti-Semitism. He's joining us from Tel Aviv. Jacob, we are seeing attacks and threats against Jewish communities in multiple countries right now. So I want to begin by asking, what should the Jewish community be on the lookout for right now? How can they protect themselves from this surge?
Well, obviously, it's a very tense time. And indeed, it's going to push some very bad actors to do some bad things. And so, first of all, there's what they call hard defense. It's to make sure there's security, to make sure you're doing the things that you need to protect your people and your institutions. So thankfully, the security people at the synagogue in Michigan were able to repel the terrorists. But if they hadn't, one can just imagine what he might have done. So obviously security is the first and a basic. But I think that drawing attention to the fact that this is unacceptable, that it doesn't start with, a guy buying explosive. It starts way before that, is something that I think needs to be mentioned. And the atmosphere of hate from fake AI generated photos to real conspiracy theories, which we've seen tons of with the start of the war. That's how these things start. So we've got to look at sort of not only the end, sort of be careful, guard yourselves, protect yourselves from the terrorists, but how these people begin their journey.
Yeah, going at it from the root of the problem, that is to say. Jacob, I want to ask also, when Jews and Israelis are told by Israel's own National Security Council to hide their Jewish identity right now, to stay away from places of worship, Jewish schools, anything that represents Israel abroad, what message does that send to those trying to harm Jews and Israelis as they're being told to hide their own identity?
Yeah, well, it's a very tough call because on the one hand, you want to keep people safe, and that's sort of the ultimate goal, and that is the most important. Pikuach nefesh, saving a life, trumps everything else. So if you need to be more careful or more less exposed, especially in this period, I think that's fine, and that's probably a reasonable advice. But generally speaking, the proper response to anti-Semitism is redoubling on your Jewish faith and your Jewish identity and just being Jewish and not being ashamed. So I think we have to know when, on a very specific, in a very specific time frame, due to a very specific threat, we got to sort of lay low. And I think that was the advice. But in general, we should do the opposite. In general, we should celebrate our Judaism and we should be proud of it. Because again, a lot of this is psychological. It's psychological when you have to sort of go undercover behind a reinforced door. That's a defensive measure. And then in a way, the terrorists win by just doing that. The anti-Semites win just by the fact that you have to become more guarded. And so when this is over, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate our Judaism. Let's celebrate Israel. Let's celebrate who we are and not be afraid.
And what can authorities and governments do to help celebrate Judaism and celebrate Israelis? What more can they be doing to make sure that people can express their beliefs in an open and proud and safe environment?
Well, I think, on the defensive side, I think that most Western governments are aware and are working with the Jewish communities to keep people safe as best they can. But I think where they should do more work is on, celebrating Judaism. Jewish, a week, a day, a month to celebrate Judaism. And that's where I think that more work needs to be done. I think people should go celebrate their Judaism in whatever manner that is. If it's going to synagogue, if it's going to a book reading, if it's singing. I mean, if it's wearing kippah or wearing a Star of David. Again, when it's not particularly dangerous to do that. So what's happened is, we're normalizing a sense of scaredness, a sense of keeping everything undercover, and that's not good. So when there's an emergency, that's fine. Just like we run to our safe rooms here in Israel, people have to be careful now. But when this is over, let's open up again. And that's, I think governments, local governments should be open to that, and the Jewish community should push for that.
Jacob Dalal, great to have you with us and hear your insight into how we can fight this anti-Semitism we're seeing around the world right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, back here in studio, Yaakov, I want to ask you, now that we have this new information from the IDF that the Michigan's attacker's brother was a Hezbollah commander, what is the link that we see from these Iranian-backed groups and the attempt for some of these anti-Semitic and terror attacks abroad?
It is a reminder that Iran has a global terror network. In this particular instance, this doesn't look very well organized. This looks like basically a family member of a Hezbollah anti-tank missile commander who decided, it looks at least at this stage, like he made his own decision to launch a terror attack on a Jewish target. But there are far more organized and capable and dangerous Iranian terror networks all over the West, particularly in Europe. And the Mossad actually exposed this network. It's an IRGC unit that has been hiring criminals. Some of them have no visible links to Iran in order to try and evade Mossad detection. And they pay these criminals to surveil Jewish communities. There was a whole cell made up of Iranians and non-Iranians in London that was very recently arrested. Surveil, gather intelligence ahead of attacks. So this is a very real threat. Mossad works day and night to prevent most of these attacks, and it's able to do that. Otherwise, we would have heard about them, God forbid. But it's a constant threat that Iran is running terror and criminal networks all over Europe and very likely also North America, targeting not just Israeli targets, but also Jewish targets, synagogues, Jewish schools. All of these things are on the Iranian target list. So they're operating in an identical way to ISIS in terms of their desire to simply attack Jews wherever they can around the world, a major threat.
Could this war be weakening Iran's different grasp, or if it's these lone wolf actors that are acting more of this ideology, could it have the opposite effect and just strengthen even if the regime is weaker?
It's definitely weakening. And this is one of the big differences between the Iranian terror network and ISIS. ISIS is decentralized. It's, depends on radicalizing and spreading jihadist ideology and then counting on local autonomous cells to do the work. That's how ISIS looks like more or less right now. Of course, we also have some other organizations. But Iran, all of it is centralized. It goes down, it comes back to the IRGC, comes back to command centers. And the IRGC is being heavily degraded. It's being demolished. The senior commanders are being killed. They're on the run. We have a situation where the most powerful military organization in Iran is a hunted organization on the run and in hiding, which is, a lot. So this is definitely weakening, and I think it will weaken the Iranian terror network. But we have to stay very vigilant for that threat, and I'm sure that Mossad is working with its Western equivalents, as well as police forces and Jewish communities who are working with their own local police forces to remain vigilant, because it is a constant threat.
It's certainly something we continue to see, especially in the midst of wars. We see this uptick, and we know that the European security forces have warned of this uptick as well, so they are certainly on high alert. But as you mentioned, so do Israelis and so do Jews abroad, and that's why we have seen many of these different warnings going out to anyone that is abroad and out of the country right now. Yaakov, Ariel, stay with us here in studio. A lot more for us to discuss. We still have another full hour of coverage right here on I-24 News as we continue to look at all of the different angles that this war with Iran is impacting, not only here in Israel, the United States, the Gulf states, the global oil markets, anti-Semitism. Quite a lot more for us to discuss, as you'll continue to find. So don't go anywhere. Stay with us right here on I-24 News.